Hello, Kirsty Salisbury here. Welcome back to another live session on the Let's Talk Near Death podcast, where we talk about life, death, and experiences in between. Now, I do apologize, we're a little bit late today. Oh my goodness, we have had Yvonne's laughing. I'll introduce Yvonne, our guest, in just a moment, but we have had such a morning. We've had things go wrong with links, with connections, with microphone, just one thing after another. I don't think I've ever emailed somebody, because Yvonne and I were just emailing back and forth so many times in such a short time. So I do apologize, Yvonne. We got there in the end, and I would love to give you a huge warm welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's so exciting to have you back.
It just dawned on me, we're two NDEers, so maybe that electrical sensitivity thing kicked in today, and that caused all our problems. So could be that.
It's not the first time that it's happened for me. Often, if you're new to the near-death experience world, often we get a lot of interference where things don't go quite so well with technology. Things shut down, things have a life of their own. You get more than one near-death experiencer on a call. So when I do group calls, oh boy, you just never know where you stand. You never know what's going to happen. So we've had a really great experience with that this morning.
We sure did.
We sure did. If you've been listening to the podcast recently, you would have heard our last two episodes, which were with Dr. Yvonne Kason, who's here today, talking about her experiences. Wow, we could just talk for days. I know we could, Yvonne. I just loved it. There was so much left, and we got to the end of a double episode, which we recorded in one hit, and I went, oh, that's too much. We'll split that in the middle. And I thought there's so much more I want to discuss. Mm-hmm. And so Dr. Yvonne Kason's agreed to pop along today, join us live. Now, I know we've got a bunch of people here live. We've got some people saying hello. So we've got Lorianne, hugs from Oregon. Hello from Virginia, from Becky. Welcome in. As you come on in, feel free to say hello. Hi, Ray. I always have the best interviews. Oh, thank you. I love that. That is so encouraging. If you're listening and you're not subscribed yet, just hit that subscribe button, because you do want to get all of the updates for future episodes and also the live sessions. There's lots happening in the podcast. I have such a ball doing these. I just love all of this work. It's so great. Anyway, today our guest, because let's get into it. It's going to be a great one again. Our guest today is Dr. Yvonne Kason. She is the president and co-founder of SAI, which is the Spiritual Awakenings International. Now, just a little plug for them. They have a fabulous conference coming up, and the Let's Talk Near Death podcast is very happy to be one of the supporters of the podcast. So make sure you check that out. I'll pop a link up very soon. Dr. Kason has had 5 near-death experiences, hence why we have so much to talk about. 5 experiences. So she's now a retired family physician and psychotherapist. She's been working in the industry for many, many years. She is the past president of IANS. She has 40 years plus counseling with diverse STEs, spiritually transformative experiences, which is a term that Dr. Yvonne coined herself. So she created that term, spiritually transformative experiences, which in this line of work, you hear about that every day. It just keeps coming along. So we are talking to someone who has so much knowledge behind her. And I'm very, very excited. Just remember, as we go, you can pop your comments in there. We've got hellos from all over the place. We've got Tennessee, British Columbia. Hello, Michael. Lumen Drops. Hello from Texas. Everybody coming in, say hello. Don't be shy in that comment field. You can leave your questions, your comments for Yvonne, and we will get through those as soon as we can. So, Dr. Yvonne, thank you. And again, a huge warm welcome for being here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Where do we start? I came out of our episodes with a whole lot of questions, but 5 near-death experiences. I know what I'm like, and I know that I can be quite hard on myself. I certainly don't want this to come out the wrong way, and excuse me if it does. Do you ever get the feeling that, what am I missing here? Why so many? Have I not got the message?
Yeah, actually, no, I don't look at it that way.
I mean that in the most politest way.
No, I don't see it that way at all. As I look back on my life and I wonder, why is it that I had 5 near-death experiences, 2 in my childhood, 3 in space throughout my adult life. and also multiple spiritually transformative experiences. I mean, we have to say that other spiritually transformative experiences, because NDEs are only one type of spiritually transformative experience,
exactly.
right? So I had a Kundalini awakening in 1976, and that's ongoing since then. I've had Kundalini symptoms. I've had numerous mystical experiences at certain points in my life. I've had many, many, many types of psychic phenomena, psychic STEs, like past life recall, premonitions, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. I'm very clairvoyant. I've also had inspired creativity or downloads. These are all different types of STEs. After death communications, had them too. So my whole life has been sprinkled with many. I'm a multiple NDE and multiple STE experiencer. And how I look at it is, I thank the good Lord, because from all of my experiences, I absolutely know that the higher power, whatever name you call it, is real. I use the word God. Other people don't like that word. They use the force or spirit. That's fine, whatever you call it. But it's real, and it's the intelligence behind the universe, and that I was being given all of these experiences. I look at it almost as a reminder to keep reminding me what my specialty was supposed to be as a medical doctor, because having these experiences is what got me interested in researching the whole spectrum of STEs and in counseling experiencers. You know, by counseling all these experiencers, and me being an experiencer too, I know they're real. I know they're not hallucinations. I know they're not a sign of mental illness. So it enabled me to be an advocate. And so that's what I've been for over 30 years, an advocate for experiencers, and saying to the public and also to doctors that this is not crazy. This is not hallucinations. And we're harming experiencers by calling it crazy or hallucinations. And I think in the divine timing, who knows why I needed to have 5, but all my NDEs were different. I mean, maybe part of that was Spirit wanted me to experience personally how even in one person, each NDE is different, let alone from person to person. So every person's NDE is unique. And even if you have multiple ones, they're all different from each other too. So, and maybe the good Lord wanted to help me deepen spiritually and have a deeper understanding, because I think with each one of them, it's sort of like going to school. You know, you learn a certain amount in grade 10, and then you learn more in grade 11, you learn more in grade 12, that each time I had a near-death experience, I was understanding more. You know, I had a deeper understanding of spirit. I had a deeper understanding of, for example, of reincarnation. In my last near-death experience, that was the only one where I remembered all my past lives, right?
Wow,
and so all of them, yeah. So it was like a veil that had made me forget had been removed, and I suddenly remembered all my past lives. And so that only happened in my 5th near-death experience. So before that, I believed in reincarnation because I'd had some past life memories. But after my 5th NDE, I know reincarnation is real, because I remembered all of a sudden all of these past lives and how they fit together. So it's all part of my soul's learning and spirit poking me in the direction that I think I was supposed to go this lifetime. My mission, if you want to call it that. That's why I think I had so many of these experiences.
Wow, it blows my mind. It's so many. Yeah, and like you said, you learn a little bit. I love how you use the analogy of going through grade school, grade 10, you learn this, and grade 11, you learn a little bit more, because I hear these experiences talking, and they say, I ask them why they think it might have happened, and they say, well, I bought something back. There was that I had to get that I couldn't get without the experience. It was like another tool for my toolkit, or I came back with a gift, or some kind of insight. So I love that you've explained it that way. That resonates with me and totally makes sense. We've got a question here around the past lives, which I knew we were going to go into this topic. Do you remember how many past lives you had?
More than I can count. Many,
Oh,
many, many,
wow.
many, 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 many. And past lives as men, past lives as women, past lives in many different cultures, past lives in many colors of skin, past lives in many religious traditions. So it's my experience anyway. It seems that in my soul's journey, I don't know for sure if that's the same for everybody. All I can say is for my own experience. It
Mm,
seemed that the whole, rainbow of types of incarnations from, just a farmer to somebody that's highly educated to somebody who's a worker to somebody who's a leader, that my soul went through many, like all of these experiences. And I guess it's part of our soul's learning, just like all the different subjects in school, that there are
mm,
different things you learn when you're, say, a farmer and very, very close to nature, or there are different things you learn if you're in one of the native Indian traditions and really, really grounded on the earth, compared to different lessons you learn when you're a leader and you have to make decisions that affect a lot of people, and so on and so forth. So, yeah, it was. But what I wanted to say too about this was, when I remembered all my past lives, it was like an aha experience, because
yeah.
suddenly my life as Dr. Yvonne Kason made sense. That in the context of all my past lives, because I thought it was sort of odd, why was I, this little person, ordinary person in Toronto, Canada, why was I having all of these experiences, near-death
Mm,
experiences and spiritually transformative experiences and mystical experiences and psychic phenomenon? I wasn't like meditating on a hilltop in India with a guru for my whole life to have these experiences. Why would it be happening to me, just leading a normal life as a doctor in Canada? And and then what I saw was that this is not my first incarnation having NDEs and STEs.
oh,
And that was
wow.
my
Okay.
aha experience. It was like, oh, aha. I've had these types of experiences before. Actually, in many of my most recent past incarnations, I've had these types of experiences. So it's sort of like my soul came in, and with the memory of this, I guess, and maybe that's why I started having them as a child. I mean, I'm only guessing, because this was something that my soul was already having in recent past lives, including my very last past life. So
Mm,
there you go.
mm. Wow. So do you think that NDEs and STEs, that the more lives we have, the more likely we are to have those types of experiences? Is it like the more we learn, or it's hard to put it into words, isn't it? Do you think that everybody has the experience of having an NDE in one of their lifetimes?
I really don't know. I really don't know. I can't answer that question. I think that, there has been really good research. Pim van Lommel from Holland has researched,
Mm,
cardiac arrest patients. And it's very interesting, in case your listeners don't know this statistic, that he researched a bunch of people that had documented cardiac arrest. So they flatlined, they were clinically dead for a period of time. And then the doctors managed to resuscitate them. And he asked with the survey, what percentage of those people, we know they were clinically dead for a period of time, we know they were resuscitated, what percentage of them remember an NDE during the time they were clinically dead? And it was only 1 out of 5, which
mm,
means 4 out of 5 do not.
mm.
And so, why is it that some people have NDEs when they're clinically dead and others do not? So that is beyond our capacity to say. But what I do think is that if you come into this incarnation, if you come into this lifetime and already because of I use the yogic model, which is the model I found explains STEs the best for me. But they talk about reincarnation and about, the soul lessons that we're learning lifetime after lifetime, and that we bring tendencies with us from our previous lives. Like if you really like Chinese food this lifetime, you might have been Chinese in a recent lifetime, something like that.
Yeah, we hear this. Yeah.
Things come with you, right? So that, for me, clearly being open to STEs, psychic phenomena, near-death experiences, mystical experiences, that came with me from my past lifetime. So I was more open to it. And so people who come into this lifetime and they're maybe since childhood, they're mediums, or since childhood, they're mystics, they do seem to be more open to having these experiences compared to somebody that their very, very first experience happens maybe when they're 60 or something like that, is very different from somebody who starts having experiences in their childhood. So is it the luck of the draw? Is it divine design? Or is it something that they brought with them from the past life? Maybe it's a little bit of all of it.
Maybe. And we will never know, will we? We're just going to carry on and go with that. Yes, I love it. Okay, we've got a couple of questions here. So many past lives. Do you incarnate chronologically, or do you pick the time on Earth to enter? Do you have any idea around that?
Well, this is a really interesting question, Paul. When I was on the other side, and when I was in that state of incredible, expansive consciousness, where I was able to just assimilate a vast amount of information all at once, and this awareness of all of my past lives, time didn't seem to function the way it does here on Earth. It's very hard to explain, but it was as if the past, the present, and the future all coexisted somehow. That you could look at all almost as if they're happening at the same time, but here on Earth, they're not happening on the same time. So we experience it happening linear, one after another. So it's very, very fascinating that the experience of time was very different there. Another example is that I felt like I was on the other side much, much, much longer than I was clinically dead. So it was as if I had this big expanse of time, and I come back and practically no time had passed here. And so do I incarnate in chronological order? Well, because I'm back in my physical body and my brain thinks the way it does as a human, I remember them in chronological order. Like I know what my last life was, and I know what the life before that, when the life before that. Interesting. For me, I mean, you might think this is very weird, but there have been overlaps in my incarnation where it seemed like, well, I was incarnated in more than one incarnation at the same time. And many people have talked about this phenomenon. But if you think about time passing different on the other side, why can't we be incarnated at two places at the same time? And in terms of picking the time to enter Earth, no. My experience on the other side, on my last near-death experience, which was in 2003, and when I remembered all my past lives, and it was like timeless time over there. At a certain point, two beings of light, two great saints who had welcomed me into the light, they were Paramahansa Yogananda and Mahavatar Babaji, appeared in front of me and telepathically told me that I may now choose whether to incarnate in the body of a babe to further serve the divine in that form, and or to come back to the maimed body of Dr. Yvonne Kason. And when I was given that choice, I was not shown all the details, like, well, this is what's going to happen if you do plan A, and this is what's going to happen if you do plan B. And, because some people have this idea that we choose what's going to happen to us. We agreed to it before we come back. That's partially true, but without the details. Because when I was my experience, when I was given that choice, either to incarnate as a baby or come back to the injured body, dead and injured body, what happened was I was in such an expansive, mystical state of consciousness. Some have said probably it was a type of samadhi state of consciousness in the between life and or mystical consciousness. And my heart was just wide open. And it seemed that it was my heart that responded, not my head, not the thinking part, but my heart that was full of love and of love for God. And my heart responded, "Oh, masters, please guide me. I want to do the higher choice. I want to do God's will." And what they telepathically communicated back to me was, it'll be more difficult, but to go into the injured body. And my heart immediately responded, "I accept." And with that, between the thought "I and accept" is when I woke up in my dead body with a gasp of air. So now, did I agree to come back to my injured body? Well, yes, I did. I did agree to come back to my injured body. But did I know anything, any details about just how hard it was going to be? Because I was disabled for 12 years. It was really, really a difficult struggle on the physical plane for 12 years after my traumatic brain injury till I got my healing experience in 2016, 12 years later. I didn't know that. I just, so in my soul, in the light, in the love, I so deeply trusted the loving wisdom of the divine plan that I accepted it no matter what it entailed. So this is what I mean about, did I choose it? Like, yes, I suppose technically I did choose it, but I didn't know all the details of everything that was going to happen. And so I think it's real important for us to have compassion for people who are going through difficulties, rather than some people. I think it's rather cool to say, well, you must have chose this on the other side. Like, I think that's very insensitive and cold, that maybe on the other side, our love and trust of the divine is so great that we go, okay, I'll take whatever lessons you have to throw at me.
Yeah, exactly. We trust that it's going to be okay, because if you're giving us that option, then you've got our back.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. I'm glad you brought up that story, because that was one of the questions that I have. We've got questions coming in, but I wanted to come back and ask you. You were given the choice to go back into a baby, like a new baby's body, or what you said was your dead body, which was going to have 12 years of problems and a massive journey ahead. If you had chosen to go into the body of the baby, I've thought about this for 2 weeks now, Yvonne. Does that mean that we can? I've always subscribed to the concept that we don't leave until we finish fulfilling our purpose, until we've finished doing what we came here to do. But if you got given that choice, and yet they were saying, but if you go back to your dead body, then there's still a whole lot of purpose and choice that comes into there that needs to be fulfilled. How much of our purpose can we actually choose? Can we leave without fulfilling what we need to fulfill while we're here?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that my experience of the higher power, I mean, in all 4 of my other near-death experiences, I had no choice about coming back. I was just sent back. It's like, whoop, you're back. And once I was even told, it's not your time, and whoop, I was sent back. So that leads me to feel, based on my experience and based from a lot of other NDEers' experience, that the higher power does have some sort of a plan, and if you want to call it a mission or a purpose or whatever, or lessons that you're having the opportunity to complete this lifetime, that there'll be a tendency for spirit to put you back. Oh, you're not done yet, send you back down. But we also have free will. That's what I've learned, is that we also have free will. And that was an example in my last near-death experience where I was given a choice that I think either way, I've always, for my lifetime prayer, is to be God's instrument. Make me your instrument. The prayer of St. Francis was sort of my theme prayer, make me a channel of your peace and of your love and of your light. And so I trust that if I had chosen the baby, that child, I would have grown up to somebody that would maybe be on a parallel mission, but in a younger body. I would already be almost 20 in that other body. So, yeah. So, So God's plan is so complex and so perfect. I don't think there are simple black and white answers. If we don't finish this lifetime, we got lots of more lifetimes to finish that lesson or that mission or that learning.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think I was quite overwhelmed. There's a little note there from Rosalind just saying maybe the baby would have to deal with the challenges, which is something that you just said as well. So really interesting concept there. But I was absolutely overwhelmed after talking with you but what if you had died? And what if nothing that you were doing now was taking place? Because I look at the work that you're doing, everything with SAI and the conference, and I've seen your work come up time and time again, and all the people that you're helping and have helped since your accident. What if none of that existed? And I felt a little bit, my heartstrings were kind of playing on that, thinking, but that wouldn't be right. And yet questioning, but that's the choice that we have. So I love that you've brought that up. I love your comment, Rosalind, about the baby. Maybe the baby would have actually taken on the purpose in their lifetime, and that you would have lived it out in that way.
Could be.
Absolutely love it. Yeah, I love it. Okay, I'm going to scroll back through some of these questions. I have never-ending questions, so I've put mine to the side. Lots of people here. Thank you, everybody, for joining in. I love when you tell me where you're from. So we've got Kath from the UK, Tamara. We've got Han from Arizona, Tamara from Texas, Paul from Denmark. If I've missed you, I do apologize. I love it when you come in, you tell us where we're from. I love your questions, everybody, as well. So just don't hold back on those. We have got a space to ask questions, which is exactly my heart for the show, is to be able to ask these questions. Okay, so the last question was about incarnating in chronological order. This one is a person ever finished with incarnating? I love this. I think about this all the time. Thank you, Michael. I feel like I've had enough and I don't remember anything before my current life. I hear you.
Well, I don't have the answers to all the questions of the universe, but I can tell you what the yogis believe and what the Buddhists believe who have reincarnation as part of their philosophy, and they have for thousands of years, is that and I personally recommend Paramahansa Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, if people want to introduce themselves into the yogic perspective on life, all matters in life. But according to yogic philosophy, and Buddhist philosophy is very similar, that yes, we do eventually, after many incarnations, reach a point where we no longer need to incarnate in the physical body. So we will become more and more evolved spiritually over many incarnations and learn our various soul lessons. And rather than having glimpses of this expanded mystical unitive state of consciousness, one would eventually ongoing live in that unitive mystical state of consciousness where all of life is, you're grounded in the world and your body, but you're also, all STEs are wide open. That is cosmic consciousness, which is supposedly the end point after many incarnations. I'm just saying that because we're not there. We're somewhere on the journey to get there. We're not there yet. And having one NDE doesn't put you there, right? Or even five NDEs doesn't put you there. But maybe, giving you some glimpses of this is the way that we're heading. And so according to yoga, then we become, basically you become a saint, you become a God-realized person. And then that is when your soul does not have to incarnate anymore on this physical plane. Now, supposedly, there are higher planes. So after we finished all of our soul learning that we get on this plane, that there are higher astral planes where we can also have astral incarnations where we're learning astral soul lessons that don't require a physical body. And then after we've graduated from the astral school of incarnations, we graduate to causal schools of incarnation, or that its causal is on a consciousness level only. It does not have visual or energy. It's in pure consciousness, that there's still other soul learning there, until finally, according to the yogis, that when we've learned all of our lessons, dissolved all of our attachments, just opened up to be just pure vessels of the divine, then we dissolve into the divine, and we still have an existence. We still know we are we, but we are no longer at all separated from the divine. And so that takes many, 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 many incarnations.
Thank you. I hope that helps, Michael. It's a fabulous question. So you talked there about how we would do incarnations here. We would learn things, then perhaps go to another level, learn things there, then another level. We'd go up these, yes, I'm going to call them levels for the sake of it.
Sure.
I hear a lot of people talking about living in different realities here. So living in different universes, different planets, different things, and that's a little bit outside the scope of the NDE discussion that we normally have.
But it's STE. It is
exactly.
STE.
Can we go back and forth? Like I've heard people talking about, well, I was over here for this lifetime, then I came to Earth, and I went over to this planet, then I came here, then I went and had a purely non-physical experience where I didn't have a body. And then I came back to Earth.
Why not? Yeah. Why not? Why not? I mean, the universe and the divine plan is so grand and so complex that why not? Somebody had said, "Are all your incarnations linear?" No, they're not. And if you think of it like school, like imagine that you're really, really good in math and science. I was really, really good in math and science, but maybe you have one subject that you're not so great in. For me, believe it or not, it was spelling. So,
wow.
And so you could be in your soul journey. You could be very, very advanced in certain areas, but have like another area. It's like, okay, we have to come back and deal with that again and again and again until we finally get that one right. And so in that sense, no, it's not linear. And also, I think I want to point out that because we have free choice, and we do, I mean, this is part of the divine, the love of the higher power, is that we are given the choice. Do we want to try and grow spiritually and draw closer to God, or do we want to stay stuck in the muck down here? Sometimes we make poor decisions, but it makes excuses for ourselves in our own mind, rationalizations why we did X, Y, or Z. I mean, this is part of the human experience. We make mistakes, and if we make a mistake, well, maybe, let's pretend it's a spelling mistake just for the metaphor. It's like, oh, okay, Yvonne's still making that spelling mistake. So we're going to send her back to an incarnation where she's really focusing on spelling, right? And you think, like, how could I have been this, champion of STEs one lifetime, and next lifetime I'm like stuck in grade 2 spelling? But if that's what your soul needs, then that's what will happen. That's how I've come to understand it.
Yeah, great. That's a really clear explanation. I really like that. Now we've got a question here from Lorianne, and I love this too. Do you feel that we always progress, or is it possible that we would go backwards and break the law, for instance, and then resolve that karma into another lifetime?
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, that's exactly what I was talking about. I mean, I'll just give an example from my own personal life, that having had multiple NDEs and multiple STEs, I'm very intuitive and I receive inner guidance. But, when I was younger, I didn't always recognize the inner guidance. And I also didn't realize how important it was to follow that inner guidance. That if I didn't follow it, there would be a negative repercussion. And so, like I was about to make a decision. I'm not going to bother on the details of the decision many years ago. And I remember I was about to make this decision and I felt like I'd been punched in the belly. Like literally my wind was knocked out of me. I doubled over in pain. And I thought, what is this? And I was talking with somebody and about to talk about this decision I was going to make with them. And I thought, I'm sorry, I have to leave. I have to go to the ladies' room for a minute. And I just sort of huddled over the sink. And I thought, like, what is wrong with me? I'd never had an experience like this. But I didn't recognize that it was spirit trying to tell me, no, do not do what you're about to do. I didn't recognize it at the time. I guess I was just too young or too inexperienced. Or I felt through guilt, I felt I had to make the decision I was making, not because I liked it, but I was being manipulated through guilt. And so I went ahead and made that decision, and I've regretted it for the rest of my life. So that would be an example, I think, for me, of making a mistake and going backwards. But in the other thing, I believe when life gives you a lemon, make lemonade. So I've now learned a very powerful lesson from that I've regretted that for the rest of my life up to this day, that when spirit guides me to do something, I'm going to do it. And spirit guided me to start Spiritual Awakenings International. And I did.
Oh, great.
I thought, what? Me? After being disabled for 12 years, start a new organization, be president, write the website, write new books. It's like, yes, you can do it. So I did.
Fabulous. We talk quite a lot, actually. I talk a lot about voices because I've got this voice which I hear a lot. It directs me. It's my inner guidance. It's my higher self. It's whatever you want to call it. And it's never done me wrong, whatever.
Exactly.
But it taps into the things that I most don't want to do, or the things I'm most afraid of.
Exactly.
It's got this knack. And that's what I'm hearing with you as well. Maybe it was a little bit hard to follow the voice. But I believe that we can all follow the voice. We've all got it. It's not exclusive to someone who's had an STE or an NDE or is psychic or medium or anything like that. We've all got it, but it's about taking the space, creating the space to listen to it. And I've got a chair in my office just in front of me, and I love to go and sit in this chair. It was my father's chair. He's now moved on. And I sit in that chair, and that's like my thinking chair, my meditative space. And anyone can do this. So I just wanted to put that in there as a little thing for our listeners.
And I just want to add a little bit to that, because, it really breaks my heart. It does, because I do see this with people I know and love who are making decisions that go against their guidance, and I try to tell them, listen, if you've had clear spiritual guidance to do X, do X. And do it now. Don't say, oh, I'll do it 10 years from now. Do it now, because otherwise you'll regret it. But I found that people don't listen. And maybe it is that people just have to learn it themselves the hard way, the way I did, that by making that mistake. And hopefully I burned off that karma in this lifetime, that because the person said about karma, of course, big mistakes, really, really big mistakes might take many, many lifetimes to do, like a betrayal of a saint like Judas who betrayed Jesus. That would take many, many, many lifetimes to work out that karma in my belief system.
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you. Okay, here we go. Han, I hope I'm saying your name right. Han, I'm not sure. If you've got questions, just keep them rolling. We'll make our way through. If you're loving this conversation, just give a little love heart. Show Yvonne some support, because we really value her time and her knowledge here.
Thank you.
And check out the SAI conference. I'm going to put the link to that up after we've chatted. It's going to be amazing. Anyway, back to the questions. Have your NDEs helped you have a happier, more peaceful life now? If so, what is your advice to help everyone here to have a better mindset?
Thank you for that question, Han. And my answer to that is yes. And the key is meditation. That's the short answer, is that my out-of-body near-death experiences as a child, I didn't even realize they were near-death experiences. So for those ones, I don't think they did help me necessarily have a happier life. But my adult near-death experiences that were all mystical or white light type of near-death experiences, each of them made me feel so much clearer. Each one, like steps, so much clearer about who I am, that I am a soul. I'm not just this physical body. I am a soul that I have lived in many bodies over many incarnations, just like we wear many sets of clothes, that my soul will absolutely live on after death of the body. And, being a disabled person for 12 years, and having had experienced on more than one occasion, but particularly after I died in 2003, the incredible, profound love of the higher power, I absolutely knew that the challenges that I was going through were not any sort of punishment. And because many people, they like, what have I done wrong? Or some people said even like very cruel things to me, like, gee, Yvonne, you must have some really bad karma that this happened to you.
Oh, really?
And and I remember immediately my heart and soul went, nope, 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 not taking that in, because I absolutely knew that the divine plan is loving for each and every one of us. And something about being on the other side, particularly the last time when I was clinically dead, I realized the divine plan is so beautiful and so complex that for us to think that we can understand it is like an ant trying to understand Einstein's theory of relativity. Like it's just simply impossible. And that my knowing that the soul lives on, that each and every one of us is loved and precious in the eyes of the divine, each and every one of us, no matter how many times we've fallen, the divine is there trying to help us move forward on our journey, and that it's a win, it's a happy ending for everybody. Like eventually, we don't know how many incarnations, but eventually all of us are going to make it home. And so that has really helped me to be a lot stronger, a lot happier in day-to-day life, because I realize it's temporary. These difficulties are temporary. Or let's say I'm having a relationship problem with somebody, and I think of, all the relationships I've had in so many incarnations. It puts it in a totally different perspective. And so the second part of the question, Han, is how to, my advice to someone who wants to have the sort of mindset that one gets after having had multiple NDEs and STEs. I have found meditation is the strongest stimulus to connecting with the spirit within. As we access that stillness within, in the Bible, it says, be still and know that I am God. As we try to enter the stillness between thoughts or the stillness between breaths, that we start connecting with this ocean of peace, which is within us. And that peace is one of the attributes of God. And so when you're feeling that is like the first hint of we're touching the other side a little bit. And in near-death experiences, that's one of the first things that experiencers have too, a feeling of peace comes over them.
That's wonderful. Thank you. I also find that nature is a beautiful way to recharge, just getting outside, being in nature, whether that's walking around barefoot on the grass. We've got a beach locally, so I go down to the beach. But that's what a lot of people who I've talked to as well have said. Nature is just a recharge battery. It just does something, helps you to connect easier.
That's right. So, it has been for me too, that I need my regular time in nature.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Okay, you doing okay, Yvonne? You happy to just keep rolling through? Great. Okay, because there's a lot of people here. Kayan, I'm not quite sure how I say your name. Welcome. I see you a lot of comment there saying hello to both of us. Okay, another question here from Lorianne. Do you think that it's possible to soul split and live part of your life force on Earth and part of your life force at the same time?
I guess that means part of your life force somewhere else at the same time. I would say yes. Definitely yes, Lorianne. That in yoga, it's understood, and there are examples, like in that book, Autobiography of Yogi, I told you about, of certain saints that were more than one place at the same time. And it's possible because time's not the same on the other side. So to us, it appears you're more than one place at the same time. But on the other side, those things are possible. By location, when I had my first adult near-death experience, it was a split like that. It was, most of my consciousness was out of my body, up in the light, but there was still a part of my consciousness that was still in my physical body, that was still swimming to shore. So really my consciousness was two places at once. And as I mentioned earlier, I'm aware that I have had some overlapping incarnations where I was still alive in one incarnation and incarnated somewhere else on the planet in another incarnation at the same time. So yes, these things can happen.
The incarnations where you overlapped, do you think that could explain the doppelganger concept?
What do you mean by the doppelganger concept?
Where you have two individuals and they might live on opposite sides of the world, they might live locally, you just don't know, but they look splitting image of each other, and yet there's no relation connection. There's no connection through family, or they're just absolute identical.
It's possible, but I can say that for myself, of some of the incarnations I'm aware where there were overlap, like my most recent overlap was a male and a female, right? So I was not even incarnated at the same sex, you know, that I was in different sexes. So they can be very, very different.
And did you feel like you ever met yourself at the same time?
Yes, that's happened to me.
And were you, this blows my mind. Were you aware that you were meeting another version of yourself?
I realized it in meditation afterwards. Like I felt it was one of these meetings where, you know how spirit orchestrates, that opens the door and you just happen to be there, just happen to be here, and you know that you meet somebody. And I felt an immediate soul affinity, like an immediate, incredibly strong soul affinity. And I noticed that there were many mannerisms this gentleman had that were very similar to mine, but much younger than me. And I thought that was interesting, you know, to meet somebody that reminds me of me. and then it was later in meditation that it was like, oh my goodness, I think this is another incarnation. It really was me. And I mean, people might think that's totally crazy. That's fine. You know, after I've been dead and back, and, you know, it's like, if you don't believe me, that's okay. But that was what my experience was. And then seeing my other past lives, I've seen there are other times where my incarnations overlapped. And various authors have written about that, and that it is possible to meet yourself in another incarnation. There are authors who've written about that. So yes, it did happen to me. It's pretty weird, but yes, it did happen to me. But I didn't say anything. I have no idea if that other version of me knew, but I knew.
Did you ever see them again, or it was a one-time thing?
Oh, it was a one-time thing.
Yeah. Wow, so interesting.
I know, bizarre, huh?
I know. My head just
mind-blowing.
All these things that I look at and research and talk about. You're probably the same, actually. My head just keeps expanding.
Exactly.
Okay, here we go. So we've got Shira. Thank you so much for joining us from Sacramento. Oh, you love us. Thank you. That's wonderful. Yes, in answer to your questions, Dr. Yvonne has 5 books. She's written 5 books. I'm going to put the link to her latest book in the comments. There we go. Touched by the Light is her latest one. I'll put the link to that there. And fabulous book. There's so much goodness in here. So that's wonderful. Go and check that out. Okay, I'm just trying to scroll down a little bit here. Gosh, this always happens to me.
Just so people know, in my book, I talk about all 5 of my near-death experiences, many of my STEs, including my Kundalini awakening. But I also have about 100 case stories of different people who've had all different kinds of STEs, so that you can recognize, oh, I've had that type of an experience. I didn't even know there was a name for that type of experience by hearing other people's stories.
Yeah, I love that. There's so many out there, isn't there? Okay, I'm just reading through all of these comments. I'm not sure if this is a question. What I wouldn't give to talk to Master. I'm going to leave that. Paramahansa Yogananda. I'm terrible with names, and connect with them already.
I'm already a Kriyaban. Oh, hello,
So there we
Tamara
go.
Terry. Isn't that wonderful? Well, if you're already a Kriyaban, my recommendation is be regular in your Kriya practice daily. Be regular in, reading some of Paramahansa Yogananda's writings. And really try to open your heart to love. They say love is the strongest magnet. So work on your devotion and love to Paramahansa Yogananda as your guru, and I'm sure that they'll make themselves known to you in some way.
Fabulous. Thank you. I hope that that's helpful, Tamara. Okay, jet fuel. Do you think that God helps us in our lives if we ask for help?
Yes,
I believe
absolutely.
so. Yep. 100%.
Absolutely. There's so many times this has happened in my life. I don't even have to waste time in giving so many examples, but I'll give you an example of yesterday. How's that for a recent example?
That's good.
Is that yesterday I was leading a session for Spiritual Awakenings International. We had a wonderful presenter yesterday, Dr. Edward Kelly. And right now they're really on a push for everybody to get to COVID vaccine in Canada, right? We're in the middle of the third wave and we're in really, really strict lockdowns. And Toronto is where I live is where the high point in Canada. So there was really this push to get the vaccine. And I thought, Lord, I have to chair this meeting. I really don't want to get the vaccine before the meeting. So I was putting off booking the appointment, and because I wanted it to be after the meeting. I didn't want to be having a reaction, so I couldn't chair the meeting. And so when I finally started trying to book my appointment last week, you couldn't get anything till the end of June or into July. And I thought, oh my goodness, I'm going to have to waste that long because there were so many people on the appointment waiting list, etc. And so Spirit just said, keep trying. And I would get these weird little ideas, keep trying. And I'd suddenly, even though there was no appointment before, then suddenly I found one for next week. And then suddenly I saw, you can put yourself on a waiting list if you can come on short notice. So, okay, put myself on that waiting list. Well, boom, all of a sudden, I got an appointment immediately after the presentation yesterday, immediately after the presentation. So when the presentation was over, I had to get in my car and drive to get my shot, which I did. It's in my left arm, a little sore, but otherwise I'm fine. But as I was driving, I went, thank you, God. Thank you. How did you do that? I mean, I wanted it after the talk. I mean, this is immediately after the talk. When you try to book one, you don't get it till July. But somehow I got it immediately after the talk. So when something like that happens, I just go, God is great. And I go, thank you, God. Thank you for looking after me. But I think all of us are looked after too. If we ask for help, sincerely, that if it's meant to be, Spirit will help you.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree with that. And I think we can use it in everyday situations like you're talking about. It doesn't just have to be the big things. I often ask for help with car parking. I need a parking space. Please, can I just have a parking space where it's going to be perfect, right outside the building or whatever? And it's not because I'm lazy. There's always a reason. So recently I had to go, and my mother, she's in her 80s. She was visiting a friend who was in the hospital, and we're talking the city hospital. So I was in the city and there's no parking that's available around there. And I said, look, I've got my mother. I don't know how to juggle this because she's not going to be able to walk far. And I really need a car park right outside. So before I left, I said, could I please have the car park? And got in the car and said to my daughter, now we're asking for a car park right outside the hospital. We got there and there was one right there. And I was thinking, why am I surprised at this? I laid it out. I said, I need help. I asked for help. Totally. So jet fuel, I hope that helps. Definitely, we can get help in everyday things all the time, and I ask for a lot of help. It's not just the big things.
COVID vaccine help.
Totally.
Help.
It's not the big things. We can ask for the little things, everything. So yes, definitely. So the follow-up question from you, Jet Fuel, is how do you know if your guides are trying to tell you something? And I'm reminded back, I think this question may have come in, Yvonne, when you were talking about being doubled over in the ladies' room. and wondering why you were having the reaction to the decision that you had to make. So I think that's when this question came in.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to you to expand on that if you wish to.
Yeah. Spirit can guide you in a lot of different ways, and it's very unique for each individual. But I think a good way to start is by, as Christy was saying, is asking. That ask, please guide me. What would you have me do? What would you have me do? And then Spirit may respond in a number of ways. Looking back when I was doubled over in pain, I now would go, Spirit, why is this happening to me? What am I supposed to learn? And if something like that happens to me, then the answer will just pop in my mind. Then I'll suddenly know, oh, this is happening because of whatever. Other times when I ask a question, I will, and other people can also get that, I will mentally in my mind's eye, I might see a big Y for yes or a big N for no. And some people, they see a red light when it means no and a green light when it means yes. Other people will hear whispers, they'll hear an actual voice say, stop. Like I know one woman told me she was driving her car and she avoided being killed in a head-on because she heard a voice in her head say, stop. And she slammed on the brake and she stopped. So there are a number of ways. And when I was in the plane crash in 1979, I heard a voice in my head say, swim to shore, like literally. That's right. A voice saying swim to shore. So there's many ways your guides might tell you. Another way that your guides might help you is by you're trying to send an email, but every time you try to send it, like what happens? It disappears. You don't have a connection. There's, what is going on? You just simply cannot send that email. And then you think, oh, it's the electrical sensitivity syndrome. And then you think, oh, maybe I'm not meant to send that email. And Spirit is running some interference, and that's why it's not working. And so basically, there are many ways that your Spirit will guide you. But I think the most important thing is to ask. And secondly, to try and be still, like meditate daily, because in the stillness, the guidance will often come. But the third step is follow the guidance.
Oh, well, that's the hard part. Yeah. Oh, fabulous. I love that. And very much. It's everybody's individual, I think. So I think you'll know when you've been given a message. It will feel off, just like with you, Yvonne. It felt off. You were having a physical reaction. I often feel things. I don't see Y's or N's or lights or anything like that, but I just know I have these feelings within me, and I know, and I do have the voice which guides me. So I hope that that's helpful to know if your guides are telling you something. Fabulous. Okay, so our next question, this is from Kyan. Again, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. It's a bit of a longer question, so bear with me. We're going to go through a few little parts here. So it starts with, have a question that's been in the back of my mind as I've been reading and listening to podcasts and videos on these kinds of topics. The same kind of question I had when I was in the church. While many of the experiences I hear are encouraging and different interpretations of them are interesting, I found that there can be contradictions in the philosophical or metaphysical implications of these experiences. For example, some will say that there is free will, and some will say everything's predestined. Some will say that you're healed of all your mental and emotional wounds when you get to the other side, and others say you take them with you and you have to work through them before you can move forward. Some say the ego should be done away with, and others say it has its place and purpose. Okay, so the next part of the question is, I found there are universal running importance of love and growing in wisdom, which may be what's really important, but I do wonder why these contradictions pop up and how to deal with them.
Okay. Thank you for your question, Kay, and I'm not sure if I'm saying your name correctly.
Yeah, me too.
I'll just share how I've come to understand it. I think your conclusion about that love is what's really important, and for us to grow and learn in wisdom and in love. It's both. It's like a purifying of the heart that we're cleansing and opening our heart. We're growing and learning in wisdom. And the ego is how we function in the world. I mean, you need the ego to drive my car to my COVID shot, right? But it was my heart and soul that had to open and ask, and to then follow the guidance. When the door was opened for me, my ego had to pick up my feet and I had to walk through and drive to the appointment, right? My ego was to be the instrument. I look at the ego like the pen in the hand of the writer, that the pen doesn't write the book. It's spirit flowing through the consciousness that writes the book, and the pen is what gets it down on paper and makes it concrete in the world. So our ego is what helps us to function in the world, but our ego is actually happiest when we are following what spirit is guiding us to do in the world. And so the ego is an instrument. And the contradictions, I look at it this way. It's like, once we're on the other side, it's like being at the top of the tallest mountain. And you can see that different people and different religions or different cultures are coming up the mountain by different paths, by different angles. And so depending on the path and the angle that they're coming at, it might look different. It might be shady over here, it might be sunny over there, it might be rocky over here, it might be snow over there. And each is true in a way as part of the picture, but the picture is like all of it combined. And then when you get to the top, you realize that all of these paths, although they're different and all these ideas, etc., that they were all partially true and partially wrong. Because maybe they're true some of the time, but not true other parts of the time. And when we get to the very top of the spiritual mountain, we realize it's all about love and our connection with that universal higher power that loves us and is helping us to find our way up the mountain by whatever path it is we're following.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question, Kayan. If you want to expand on that, feel free to send me an email. We can look at expanding on that. I'm aware that I possibly didn't read through it so well, but really great. And thank you, Yvonne, for that. That is amazing. Okay, we have got time for a couple more questions if you wish to pop them through. In the meantime, I'm just going to ask one of mine, Yvonne, which is, what are your thoughts around generational experiences? So family patterns, do generationally, I've got it here, do gifts and the concept of having a near-death experience or spiritually transformative experience, we hear about families where maybe the mother had psychic abilities and the daughter does too, and then her children do, and it folds down through generations. How do we explain that? Is that like a residual energy that comes through? Do we see the same with near-death experiences in particular, where family members might have them or they might miss a generation, but then another family member would have one?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question. I think there is some sort of a generational tendency. I mean, I'm convinced my father had a near-death experience with one of his heart attacks because he had such a profound personality change afterwards and became so loving and so expressive of his love. And I mean, back when that happened, which was back in the 60s and 70s, nobody knew about near-death experiences. But now when I look back, I think my own father had a near-death experience. And my son had a near-death experience when he was about 5 or 6 years old. And wow. So is there a predilection in my family? Maybe. Is it genetic? Maybe. Is it that when we were drawn as souls to incarnations that we were drawn to be born in a family with other people who had these sorts of tendencies, so we would be understood? Maybe. It's really hard to say, but I do believe that there is a familial component sometimes. And like you said, people who are born mediums or born seers, often one of their parents or maybe an aunt or maybe a grandparent was also a seer. And so there does seem to be something that can be cross generations. Mm-hmm.
Yep, definitely. I find it so interesting. So many thoughts here. I want to ask one question that we didn't get to cover in our podcast episode. As you talked about in one of your experiences, it may have been the plane crash, I'm not sure, where you exited before you died.
Yes.
I've heard this quite a few times now.
Actually, all four. My first four.
All four of them?
All four of them, I exited my body before dying. I didn't die in my first two. I was close to death. The first one, I was almost hit by a train when I was 5, and I went out of body. Time stood still. I could see what was happening. I was in the peace and calm. The next one, age 11, I had a head injury in a car accident. I was unconscious for 3 days, but I was floating above, watching, them trying to resuscitate my body, etc. I wasn't dead. I was unconscious, but I was having a near-death experience, and I had after effects afterwards. I would mediumistic abilities afterwards, so it was definitely a near-death experience. But I was not dead. I was definitely out of body. My plane crash near-death experience, I already told that story. I was still swimming to shore when I went out of body. So part of my consciousness was swimming to shore, and then next part, the big part of my consciousness went out of body and into the light. So my consciousness was 2 places at the same time. And again, my body never died. I was at best unconscious from being hypothermic when I was rescued, but I was never dead. My 4th near-death experience, it was in another plane mishap where it looked like we were going to crash, and I went out of body. I went through a life review, and then I was stopped by a being of light who said, "It is not your time." And then I was sent back to my body, and then miraculously the plane didn't crash when it looked like it was going to. This was a big commercial jet. And that had really, really powerful after effects, even more powerful than my earlier ones. And then, so the only one where I was actually dead when I went out of body was my last one, my 5th one. So we now know that you can have a near-death experience when facing death, when close to death. Fear of death or abuse will often launch people into a near-death experience. And then, of course, clinical death, then being resuscitated. But again, it's only 1 in 5 who have it.
Yeah, exactly. And so my question is more around what I've seen as a pattern when there's an accident or there's a forceful impact to cause death. A lot of people talk about popping out of their body before the impact happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess for me personally, my father died in a plane crash. And so I think about this a lot. Gee, we're really promoting air travel right now, aren't we, with this conversation? But anyway, I often think about that, and I tell myself it's okay because he would have popped out his body before the impact happened.
Very likely. Yeah, very likely.
This is what I tell myself because it makes it easier to deal with. Yeah. But actually talking to you, and I remember you were saying about that popping out your body, and it's a common theme that I've heard throughout the interviews that I've done. So I wanted to raise that and just see what you had to say around that. So that is actually really reassuring. It's really beautiful. Thank you. Okay, we've got just, I think, 2 more questions, and I think I'm going to close the door because we've been going for quite some time. I'm aware that we'll just keep going for a little bit. Okay, so this one, another long one. It seems that medication is the secret to
I think it should be meditation.
Yeah, I think so. So I read it and then I thought
meditation. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll
assume he means meditation.
Yeah, it seems that meditation is the secret to connection for us mere mortals who haven't had NDEs. I spent 2 years as a learning mediumship every Tuesday night where we learn to see the way that spirit speaks to us, amplifying clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, etc. My light soon started flickering in response to my thoughts. I've even had light fittings explode and relevant pictures falling off the walls in response to my thoughts. Wow, that's interesting. Okay, here's part 2 of this from Ben. Example, I was sadly thinking about my relationship with my estranged daughter, who I in fact love deeply, and at the moment a beautiful photo of her that I took as a child fell off the wall and smashed on the floor. It was certainly a confirmation for our relationship that spirit was watching over us. Wow.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Ben, for sharing that. And it may be that it was your own energy that made it fall off the wall. I mean, I've had this happen many times. I mean, we talked briefly about electrical sensitivity syndrome. I don't know if anyone's talked about this on your show or not, Christy,
yeah, about it, yeah.
but this is where people, and it's not just NDE experiencers, it can be people who are having other types of STEs. So it's not just NDEers who have electrical sensitivity syndrome. And that could be things like you make light bulbs pop sometimes, you might make your microwaves beeper go off, you might set off the alarm at the airport, you might make microphones fritz out. But some people also, and they talk about this as poltergeist phenomenon, that as if there are other spirits that are moving things, which can happen. But sometimes it is our own energy that if we're feeling a very, very strong emotional, a strong emotion, that our energy, if we're one of these people who's had a spiritual awakening or a Kundalini awakening, that our own energy can make objects move. And so that's why I'm saying, like, your energy might have made the picture of your daughter come off the wall, because you were thinking about her so intently and the challenges. And I certainly had, once I was speaking, getting ready to speak to an audience where I knew there were people in the audience. This was a live presentation in an auditorium. And there were several people in the audience that I knew were very, very hostile towards me. And normally, you know, I like to speak in audiences where people are loving and supportive. And to know that I'm going through to an audience where there are people who really want to discredit me and think that I'm lying and all this sort of stuff, because there are people like that there. I was preparing to go out and talk, and I was in this sort of like ante room, and I was just trying to calm myself, focus on the third eye, take some deep breaths, meditate a little bit, and all of a sudden the glass, it was actually a coffee mug that was sitting beside me on this little table, moved about 12 inches and then fell on the floor. And so there was nobody else in the room. I realized it was my energy, right? You know, that I was really tense and that my energy had made this object move. And have I made light bulbs popped and computers fritz? Well, we had a lot of trouble today, didn't we, Kirsty? So,
we sure did. Yeah,
so anyway, yeah, it could be our energy making objects move, or it could be a little tap from the other side. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. I have problems with my car. The lights always go on, the indicators flash, the clock constantly changes. And I thought I was just going crazy. My daughter now sees it. She's like, why is that doing that? Why is the clock wrong? And all sorts of things. It's always at the mechanic. And then they say, there's nothing wrong with this car. And I'm like, but the engine light's on or something's wrong. And it's just part of it, isn't it? It's something we have. But I really love that question, Ben. Thank you. Very interesting. I do believe that Spirit is watching over the two of you. Yes, definitely. And sending you much love there with your daughter. Okay, this is going to be our final question. Then we're going to wrap up. If you haven't had your question answered, feel free to come through to us via email. Okay, is it necessary to be in meditation to connect with Spirit, or is there hope for those who are bad at it? Smiley face.
Yes, there's hope for everybody, because we are all connected with Spirit all the time. Okay, we're all connected with Spirit all the time. We're like drops in the ocean. Are we connected to the ocean? Yes, you know, all the time. Our issue is our receptivity, our openness to hear, to listen. And what meditation helps us listen better. But some people find it very difficult to be still and meditate. Then focus on prayer, you know, focus on prayer, focus on walking meditation, on imagining that Spirit is in the beauty of nature all around you, that Spirit is in the beauty of the ocean, that Spirit is in you, that Spirit is in everybody. You can use your imagination to try and feel or visualize your connection with Spirit. So there are different ways to improve your listening. And all of these are like different types of meditation, prayerfulness, talking to Spirit, walking and talking with Spirit. It all helps you to focus on that connection, which makes you a better listener. So yes, there's absolutely hope for everybody because spirit is connected to us all the time.
All the time. I love that. I love that. And like you say, Yvonne, it doesn't have to be sitting cross-legged and striving to meditate. I'm a walker. I love to get out and walk. And sometimes I put in my headphones and I'll listen to some beautiful music that helps me to connect. Other times I've got nothing. It is what works for us. We don't have to strive with the process, I don't think. So I love that. That's brilliant. All right. Han says, same thing happens with my car. My husband gets so frustrated. I love that. Ben says, thank you so much for your response. That's wonderful. Lots of beautiful comments there. So, Dr. Yvonne Kason, we've talked together, well, with everybody listening for many hours now, and I still think of questions that I could have. It is just so wonderful. If you have enjoyed this, please just send your comment, let people know, let Dr. Yvonne know, or just send some love and support to her, because it takes a lot to keep showing up to all of these interviews. I know that Yvonne does a lot of interviews. She gives a lot of what she's got, and it does take stuff out of us. And so if we can just give her some support, that would be fabulous. I'm going to put the link to her book. Go and buy the book. If you want to hear all about the experiences, if you want those 100 case stories of spiritually transformative experiences, because here on the podcast, we talk a lot about near death. It's this much of the story. There's so many other topics. We do venture into other topics from time to time, and that's wonderful. But if you want to go and learn more, then I'm going to put the link to her book. Go and get the book. It is fabulous. And finally, don't forget that we've got that conference coming up, the SAI, the Spiritual Awakenings International Conference. So that's June, is it the 15th, Yvonne?
It's June 12th and 13th. And
it's
free.
I was close.
It's free, it's online, and our website is www.spiritualawakeningsinternational.org. So sign up on our mailing list and you'll get notices of all of our events. And maybe we'll see some of you at SAI.
Absolutely. The link to that conference is on the Facebook page. If you receive my weekly emails, it's on the bottom of there. If you don't receive them, send me an email, leave a comment on Facebook, leave a comment in YouTube, wherever you're tuning in from, it is there. I love you all. These calls happen because you tune in, you ask your questions. My heart's to create this space for the conversation. I feel so blessed by all the conversation that takes place. So thank you so much. Got some beautiful comments coming in. Excellent interview. Thank you both for your wisdom. Thank you, Yvonne. Thanks, guys. So many questions, so many beautiful answers. Dr. Yvonne Kason, thank you for your time, everything you're doing, and jump in, support Yvonne however you can.
Thank you, Christy. Thank you, Christy.
All right, thank you. And thank you, everybody else. Have a fabulous evening or day wherever you are in the world.